Okay, my friends, questions and maybe answers. We'll see. I'll promise to answer to the best of my ability, and if it's a question I don't know or I don't want to lead you down the wrong path, then I'll skip it. I'll leave that for later. So this is what you were doing last week, huh? 2 weeks ago. Why is creativity not mindfulness? Musical composition, art, etc. I don't think that creativity itself is not mindfulness. I mean, mindfulness is something that you do, and no matter what you're doing. You know, and now, for instance, I think the person is probably coming from the view of like, in Buddhism, you know, nobody's music is bad, and this and that is bad. For monks, yeah, but for lay people, it's okay. You know, this is somebody who composes music. This is something that can be a very mindful process. This is something that can be a process that allows you to look at your mind, right? When you're creating something, you can observe how it's coming through in your mind, just like we're talking about with the 4 frames of reference, right? How does a thought come? When does a thought come? Most likely in the shower or someplace when you're not thinking, and then all of a sudden you have this epiphany, right? But creativity itself is not looked down upon. I mean, obviously, like I had to use some creativity to put together the talk that I did, you know, this afternoon. You know, this is something that creativity is a part of the way the human mind works. So, you know, I think when you see like the precepts, engaging in music and singing and all that kind of stuff, that is something that we're putting aside for the time being while we do our meditation practice. Now, this is something, obviously, you're not going to see monks doing that stuff. Although I did see a video of Tibetan monks breakdancing, but I found out that they're not real monks. So, but so your monks are not going to do that kind of stuff because that is our life goal. I mean, the reason why we become monks is to look internally and to spend as much time as we can moving internally instead of trying to find happiness in these external kind of activities. So for lay people, composing music is fine. That's no problems. You're not going to go to hell or anything like that. Don't worry about it. Just be mindful of your creativity. You know that it's a process of the mind. That's all. Oh, I love this one. Although I guess it is technically a Dhamma question. What is the purpose of life? For me, it's been an easy answer. The purpose is what you make it. I make my own purpose. That has always been my answer to the meaning of life. And that has led me to doing what I'm doing now, right? This is my purpose. This is what I want to do. You know, you can wander around life and just be aimless and not have a purpose and hope that some kind of purpose will magically appear from the clouds, or you can make your own purpose. So my answer to that, what the meaning of life is, or what the purpose of life is, to make your own purpose. Because you're not going to get a magical purpose out of nowhere. You're not going to get a magical answer of what the meaning of life is. You make your own purpose, you make your own meaning. How can I know if I'm making any progress? One of my favorite monks, he's been deceased for a while now, but he actually had a wonderful answer to this question. And the question is, if somebody is sick, they can know if they're getting better or if they're getting worse. That's how you know if you're making progress. You observe yourself. You see, oh, well, a year ago, I would have been really angry at this situation, but I'm not. Or at least I might be angry, but I'm not being outward about it. I'm not showing it outwardly. I can not let it control me and take me over. So these are the kind of things that you see. Now, it's not easy to start meditation and then like 2 months later try to find changes. This is something that really you kind of have to notice over time. It takes a while. You know, you're going to find benefits pretty early on, but to see real personality development, to see real change takes a while. And you can look, like I said, I've been doing this for about 10 years, meditation. And when I look back, I think to myself, wow, how far I've come. And then I look forward and I say, oh man, I have a long way to go still. But I can look back, I can understand how much I've changed in those 10 years. How much of the qualities that I talked about this afternoon that have developed in my practice. So you see it in yourself. It's not something that you necessarily have to, really try to look hard for. It's like, you meditate and then you wake up the next day, am I changed? And you meditate again and you wake up the next day, am I changed? You're not going to see much in that. But if you continue to practice and you notice over time how you react, that is really going to be the key. I've known people who look like they're like can meditate like perfect like a rock for like an hour. And you're like, oh man, there's so much cooler meditators, I suck, right? And then they have basically the wisdom of a rock because they didn't gain any wisdom. They can sit there, but they don't have the wisdom that you can see because when you interact with them, when you see how they react to the ups and downs of life, you wonder, well, what happened? What's going on? You can, So it's how you observe how you react to the ups and downs of life, and that is how you see how you change. So. Oh, this is a tough one. I don't even know how much of a good answer I could give to this. Is there a difference between mindfulness and concentration? I would say that mindfulness is essentially a type of concentration. I've heard mindfulness and concentration be compared to almost like a flashlight. Like concentration is practicing focusing on that one object, and it's a deep focusing. So it's like the flashlight is a narrow cone and really far. And mindfulness is like having the wider cone, right? So it's like mindfulness is covering not just one object. It's covering everything in your experience, everything in your 4 frames of reference. That's one way I've heard that described. Now, if you want to talk about right mindfulness and right concentration, this is different. There's 2 types of meditation that actually, in Buddhist practice, the way the Buddha taught, actually go together. People separate them now these days, but actually, and I had you practice them both together. There's mindfulness of breathing. That's what's typically considered or thought of as a concentration, following your breath or following an object. And and this leads to deep, deep stages of bliss and concentration. And these stages don't, within themselves, don't produce any insight, don't produce any wisdom. That's what you need the mindfulness for. The Buddha, when he talks about how to practice, you practice this concentration. Mindfulness of breathing was his main thing that he taught. And you practice this mindfulness of breathing, or this concentration of breathing, to the point where you start to have very deep, concentrated levels of awareness. And that's where you use your mindfulness to start to see things, to see reality how they truly are, how it truly is. So, in all reality, mindfulness, just the words themselves, mindfulness takes concentration. So it is a type of concentration, but it's a different focus of concentration. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it, unless somebody better tells me something else. I'm putting aside all the monk/personal questions for last. If impermanence is the nature of all things, does that make impermanence impermanent? Bhante Ji is very, very fond of saying, the only thing permanent is impermanence. So that's your answer. The impermanence is just simply the nature of nature. There is nothing in nature, period, that does not change, that you can grasp to, and it is stable. You can even look into science. This is not necessarily something that you have to believe in a religion or something a guy 2,600 years ago said. You can look at science, you can look at astronomy. The earth has come into being. It will eventually be enveloped by the sun when the sun dies. The earth is going to die. Not only is the earth and the sun going to die, eventually our galaxy will die. And eventually our universe will die. There will come a point, and granted it's a lot of years, I mean it's trillions of years from now, so you think, oh, well, that might as well be impermanent. But it's still not permanent. There'll come a point where all the stars and all the universe are dead. Everything is dead and dark. So, even something as grand as the universe is impermanent. It is the nature of nature. There is nothing that is permanent except for impermanence. Okay. Somebody else asked me about dreaming, so I'm going to put those two together, essentially. This one is saying, can you talk about your opinion, beliefs on the dreaming state? And have you achieved meditation while dreaming? According to Buddhism, according to our tradition of Buddhism, dreaming is not a state that you meditate in. Now, you might dream that you're meditating, but you're not going, this is not like it's not like Inception where you're in the dream and you're like developing mindfulness and concentration or something like that. It's not like that. So dreaming is essentially a time where you're unconscious. And there's, in terms of intention, right? There's no, like in the monks' rules, there's all kinds of stuff like, regarding bad acts that monks did. And a monk feels like, oh, this happened in a dream. Did I do something bad? And he goes to the Buddha and says, the Buddha says, no, you were dreaming. Don't worry about it. So, now in Tibetan Buddhism, they do have a lot of stuff regarding like lucid dreaming and things like that. which is something that I tried to get into, because that's the other question somebody asked. I have tried to get into that in the past, but and what I found and other people that have done it have found it's not necessarily helpful to your meditation. You know, I mean, it doesn't really, you control the dream, but you can't, you can maybe artificially make yourself wise in the dream, but when you wake up, that wisdom's not going to be there. It was just a dream. So I think I actually have dreamed that I was meditating, so I have achieved meditation while dreaming, yes? Okay. How did you reach the decision to live a monastic life? So essentially, really it's a natural progression. You know, in my late 20s, I started to develop spiritually, and you know, I was seeking for something. I was raised Catholic, and from you know, a young teenage time, I knew it wasn't for me. For you know, most of my 20s, I was nothing. You know, so it didn't. You know, it wasn't an important thing for me. But then I got into meditation, and I started developing spiritually, and I became a Buddhist. And then I started practicing the path of the Buddha. And then that led me to want to be an ordained monastic. It's just a natural progression. It's not like I woke up one day and all of a sudden, yeah, I want to be a monk. You know, it's something that happened naturally through the practice. Now that always scares people because they're like, I mean, if I meditate, I'm going to become a monk? Well, each person is different. You never know. If you practice and it leads to that point, you just might want to have that, make that decision. So, I mean, it is a natural progression of the practice. The way the way the Buddha taught this practice was that eventually you will want to let go. You will want to, if not ordain, at least practice to the point where you don't want to be reborn again. Now, of course, for most people, that's not like this lifetime, right? You know, the most Buddhist practitioners aren't practicing for, I'm going to be enlightened right in this lifetime, right? Some people do, most people aren't. But it's a natural process that, according to Buddhism, can take many lifetimes, maybe thousands of lifetimes or more. So, you know, again, it was a natural progression. You know, it was, there just came a point where even though I had a great life, there was something that the Buddha, I saw what the Buddha was talking about, and he offered something, the possibility of something better. So it was something that I knew that if I didn't go for it, I would regret it. So that's how I came to that. What has been the biggest challenge in your meditations? Sitting for more than 30 minutes. No. That has been a challenge, but it's not my biggest challenge for a long shot. The self-judgment, the self-negativity, that was really the biggest hurdle of the first couple of years of my practice. Now, that's not to say that I don't still have self-judgment and that I don't still have negativity, but it has been pretty much destroyed to a very little degree, you know, compared to what it was. And that's something you asked about, you know, how do you know if the practice is working? I know the practice is working because I saw that I'm not harping on myself as much. I'm not judging myself as much. And really, the great thing about that is when I stopped judging myself, it went a long way and stopped judging others as well. You know, when I was compassionate for myself, I stopped judging myself. Somebody did something, it just didn't bother me as much. It was just an understanding in me, well, this is just nature. This is just how they are, currently. We all have greed, hatred, and delusion. What can you do about it? So that really is the biggest challenge that I had overcome for the most part. Let's see, anything, biggest challenge now? Well, since coming to the monastery, one of the biggest challenges for me was my meditation changed. And by change, I mean, when I look back to my lay life, my meditation was so light and peaceful and happy, and I didn't take myself seriously, and it was just and it naturally progressed. I had great concentration and peace and calm. And I come to the monastery, and it's like, I'm going to be a monk. I know a monk has to, and in my mind, a monk has to be like this, a monk has to be like that. I have to do this, I have to meditate hard, and all that, because how can I teach people if I can't meditate myself, and all these things. And all that did was just totally contract my meditation. Right? I wasn't getting anywhere. I was struggling. I was having a hard time. And we have this thing called seclusion. January, February, the monastery essentially closes down, and for a whole month we're off. We can do, some people, do various things. There's no rule of what we need to do, but I like to try to do my best to be in total seclusion, not talking to people much, and so I went through this, in this seclusion, I just realized, like, wow, I remembered what I lost. And within the space of a day, my meditation changed. My meditation went back to the way it was, because I was smiling, and I was happy, and I was light. There was no, I have to do this, or I have to do that, and all this negativity and this pressure that I was putting on myself, that I have to do this, or I have to be this way. So remembering once again to laugh at myself, remembering once again to smile, to be happy. And you might see, I'm up here and I might smile, and maybe I'm actually happy, or maybe I'm smiling just for the heck of it. Maybe I'm starting to get negative and I just smile just to change my mind state. So that's some hurdles. Tips for carrying the peacefulness achieved during meditation through the rest of daily activity. Really, I guess my first response to that would be that as you practice and as you develop your meditation, it automatically carries throughout your daily activity. In terms of something active that you can do, it's just trying to, whenever you're doing something, if you have the thought, just for a fleeting second, okay, let's practice mindfulness. Let's just be aware. Whatever you're doing, most of the time during the day, we're so wrapped up in what we're doing, we don't take that second to step back and be mindful. And so, if you practice that, maybe in the beginning you might not even remember. Maybe once every 4 days you might remember to be mindful and to consciously be mindful. Okay, what are my feelings? What are my thoughts? What's going on? Observing that. And when you're able to do that, and that develops, when you start to go away in these mind states, if you're mindful, you can take it back and you can keep your peace and through all these activities. One of the great things that Bhante Ji, in one of my retreats years ago here, that Bhante Ji gave as advice was, for every hour during your day, try to take the last minute and just follow your breath. So every hour you're trying to actively take 1 minute just to stop and to follow your breath and to be mindful. I was in Child Protective Services before this job. It was a job that was very hectic and very emergency prone and very running all over the place, driving here and there. But when I was doing this, I still did my best to try to practice taking that minute. or even just taking time, before I had to go into a meeting, before I had to go to a house, stopping and just taking a couple minutes just to be mindful and aware, follow my breath, and just be calm. This is something that you actually have to actively work towards. It doesn't come by itself. It comes after you've practiced it. It's a habit, just like any other. Do you come from a background of Buddhism, or did you discover it on your own and then from there want to be a monk? So obviously I already told you I was a Catholic, raised Catholic, 12 years of Catholic school, altar boy, youth group leader, the whole thing. I did all of that. Thank you. Thank you for your sympathy. I appreciate it. Yeah.
As a follow-up question, how did your family take it when you wanted to become a monk?
Ah, that's interesting. So my mom had kind of had dreams of me becoming a priest, and so really one of the ways I first broke it to her, and this was years ago actually. It wasn't like I decided I wanted to be a monk, and then here I am at Bhavana, 10 days later. I said, "Hey Ma, remember when you wanted me to be a priest? What do you think about me being a Buddhist monk?" And she didn't have much to say. She was kind of like, it's one of those things where I told I'm 37 years old. I'm going to be 38 in a couple of weeks. So, I had a career, I had a business, I had car payments and all of these things. So it wasn't like, okay, I'm going to be a monk. Okay, I'm done. I'm just going to jump right into the monastery. I had to work my way to being able to be ordained. You can't have debt, and you have to fulfill certain requirements when you want to be a monk. So, so it's one of those things where it literally from the time I probably consciously made the decision, I think I want to do this, to the time I came was about 4 years. So my family and my closest friends basically knew the whole time. Now, of course, they never really took me seriously. They took me seriously like the month before I was actually coming. Then they're like, "Oh, you're leaving. We're sad." Yeah. So, so they're not necessarily against it, but they'd much rather have me home. Especially, it was harder in the beginning. Now that they see that I'm really happy here, I've been here a year and a half, and I'm not gonna run back to New Jersey and be sad and all this kind of stuff. They're happy for me, but they'd still rather have me home. It's just one of those things. It's just the way family is, right? Especially parents. The way your parents are now, and you guys are early 20s, late teens. The way your parents are now, they're going to be that way when you're 37. Trust me. That does not change, not one bit. So that's just how it is. Our parents always want you to be close, but so that's how they kind of feel that way. How I discovered Buddhism was really, I think most Westerners, their first kind of experience of Buddhism is the Dalai Lama. Growing up, that was, I was raised Catholic, and this was before the internet. This was before this kind of you have instantaneous information, and my 11-year-old nephew knows about religions I've barely even heard of, because he can go on the internet. This is in the days where, basically I remember seeing this monk on the TV, and I'm like, he has nothing. Why is he so happy? What's going, what is he, he doesn't have a house, he doesn't do anything. What's going on with this guy? And so that kind of stayed with me. Obviously when I was a kid, I wasn't I'm going to be a Buddhist monk. But just the image of this happy, bald monk just stayed with me, all this time. And, and so I guess that was really my first experience of Buddhism. Growing up, I liked to learn about a lot of different religions. My major in college was anthropology. So I love human culture and human, society, religion, and all that stuff. I studied all that. I have a copy. I've read the Quran. I've read the Bible. I've read the Torah. I've read it all. I've gone to, various temples. I've experienced it all. But when it came down to it, for me, it was Buddhism that really kind of, I always said that I was a student of all religions and a practitioner of none. But if somebody put a gun to my head, I'd probably choose Buddhism. That was me in my 20s, basically. And so when it came time to look for something spiritual, that was my first, that was my first thing to go for. Okay. What do you miss the most about conventional living? I assume this question means, what do you miss the most about lay life, or like living out, not being a monk? I guess if I really have to pick something, maybe video games. I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty content. I mean, I answer this question by basing it on the amount of nostalgia I get in my mind day by day. And compared to pretty much everything else, I would say video games is probably the most. I was a really big gamer. I was a nerd in high school and somewhat in college, but I was playing video games since basically they existed. So.
What games?
Oh God. This is not Dhamma. Mostly PC games. A lot of online games. Yeah, that was my socializing in high school, because I didn't do much of it with actual people who were 10 feet from me.
Do you have any names of any person that comes to mind? A game?
Before your time. Ultima Online is the game, way before your time. So, because I think I was a little bit younger than you guys when it came out. But anyway, if you want to talk about games, we wait till the end of the retreat. Then maybe I'll talk about games, if I don't get yelled at even then. But definitely not in a Q&A. Okay. What made you choose this life? I already spoke to that. What does it take to become a monk? I can talk about that. Okay, so I'll talk about that, I guess, in terms of the requirements and also the mindset. Essentially, to become a monk, a couple of the requirements: you can't have any debt. No debt. That includes like debt to government, like the draft and these kind of things. Like if you owe government service, you can't become a monk. If you're a wanted criminal, you can't become a monk, because that is a debt to the government. So you can't. So debt, monk, and then it goes into a whole list of, like, you have to be a human first of all. And the reason why that came about is because in the Buddhist mythology, there's various beings and various kind of like dimensions and all that stuff, and there's beings, essentially a dragon, basically. There's these beings called Naga, and one of the Nagas can take forms of humans, and they wanted to try to ordain under the Buddha. And when the Buddha finds out, he says, sorry, no, only humans. So you have to be human. You can't, some of the old things are like, you can't have like leprosy and all, like a lot of like physical impairments and diseases and stuff like that. And the reason being for that is that a monk lives totally and utterly supported by the generosity of others. Everything you see here, all the food that goes into our bodies, all the clothes that we wear, the medicines that we take, is because of the generosity of others. We don't exist, we don't live if it's not for others. So the less of a burden that we can be on others, the better. That's one of the main reasons also why we only eat 2 meals a day, going back to the time of the Buddha. There's other reasons as well, but we don't need to go into that. So what else does it take to become a monk in terms of... Did I miss anything specific in terms of the requirements before I go into mental?
Parents' permission.
Oh, parents' permission, that's right. And yes, it doesn't matter how old you are, you still need your parents' permission. And that goes, I saw your hand, I'll get you. That goes back to essentially 3,000 years ago, a son leaving a house is pretty devastating to the house. This is like the head of the household. This is the person who's going to take over the house. And now some bald guy comes in, now my son wants to shave his head and get in a robe and go in the woods. What the heck's going on here? So that's why it's important to get your parents' permission. And indeed, there's multiple monks in the suttas who basically like go on hunger strikes and just will like die if they don't get ordained. And then their parents are like, eventually, okay, you can get ordained. So, and the question?
I suppose ex-cons can't be monks either then.
Yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, they've, as long as they've paid their debt to society, as long as they're not owed, that they have to be owed something to the government, yeah, that's fine. So what about the mindset? So really the mindset, as far as I know, I mean, I've only been a monk 4 months. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of monks and I've listened to a lot of monks talk. So, I mean, I can go by the mindset of what I know in my personal experience and what I've heard listening to other monks. It's really a mindset of renunciation. And renunciation is a term that kind of scares people who aren't monks. Because when people hear renunciation, they automatically think, oh, I have to give up everything and become a monk. Right? And this is why when I was talking about, during my talk today, when I said renunciation, I expanded on that, explaining letting go of generosity. Generosity is letting go. Giving is letting go. You're giving something to somebody else. Now, if you're giving something to somebody else because you expect something in return, that's not generosity. That's not giving. That's you're expecting something. So giving is letting go. So, and the monk really has to do the largest amount of letting go. I mean, you're not only letting go of, things that people automatically think of, like sexual relationships and being able to have any kind of food you want at any time and all of these kind of things. But you're also letting go of like family. You're also letting go of a life. You're essentially being reborn. That's really what you're doing. I mean, in a figurative sense, you are letting go of an old life and everything that comes with that life, and you are being reborn into a new one. And of course, it's not necessarily an easy rebirth. It's not easy to give these things up. Just because we put on a robe doesn't mean that we don't have times where we miss things from lay life. It's just, part of the progression. The more I get into this, the more I realize how much I have to let go. And then I sort of kind of have like a freak out anxiety attack. I'm like, oh my God, can I do this? Can I really even let go this much? And then eventually I think, I get through it. I'm like, okay, I can do it. I can move forward. And so, I might reach a point where I might not, be able to let go anymore. And then at that point I disrobe. Becoming a monk, it's not a lifelong commitment. It's not like you become a monk and you have to be a monk for life. Essentially, I can go to Bhante Ji or any senior monastic. I can say a couple lines, give him my robes, and I'm done. I'm gone. So it's one of those things where, you're a monk because you really want to do it. And you stay a monk because no matter what else happens, no matter what else is pulling you, it's not as strong and it's not as important as wanting to do this practice, wanting to be here doing this. And there's two facets of it as well. Most people kind of think that monks, you become a monk and then you get your robes on, you go in a cave, and then you don't see anybody. That is the case for a rare amount of monks on this planet, but that's not how it was initially set up, and that's not the norm. The monk's life is essentially half working on their own practice and half working with other people, spreading the Dhamma. People who come here who want to learn about meditation, about following the Buddhist path, and these kind of things. That's part of our training as a monk. We learn, we read the suttas, which are the discourses, or the scriptures, if you want to use a more biblical term. We learn the ancient language that these scriptures are originally in. We understand this, and we take that understanding and we put it in our own practice. And when we have the wisdom and the insight that develops from that understanding and that practice, then we're able to, bring it to you guys and to the people who come here. Once a week or once a month for a week, 40 people come here and they spend a week with us. Right? So they spend 7 days, and it's all free of charge, which is another reason why this is all amazing. And so, our lives are not just about us and about our practice, but our practice is also about everybody else as well. The Buddha set it up so that there's, he called it a fourfold assembly. And the fourfold assembly are male and female monks, male and female lay disciples. This fourfold assembly keeps each other up. This fourfold assembly works together. How I've heard it put is the lay people provide food for the body to the monks, and the monks provide food for the mind for the lay people. So it's a symbiotic relationship. We work together. So that's another important thing about the mindset of being a monk as well. I don't think I have anything else to add to that. What drew to you becoming a monk? Already talked about that. What is the most rewarding part of meditating every day? That's a good question. I guess it's the first thought that comes into my mind actually is when you overcome the feelings of aversion, when you overcome this strong feeling of, I don't want to meditate. Why am I meditating? And that happens to me on a regular basis. I'm sure it happens to most people on a regular basis. Especially the night meditation after we do our chanting, and I'm meditating, and my mind is just coming up with all kinds of reasons why I should not be in here meditating. You have a wood stove, you're going to be cold at night, you have to go and put wood in the fire, you have to do this, you have to do this. And those days where I don't listen to it, where I stay in here and meditate, those are amazing days, because that's really a symptom of the overall nature of the practice, and that you don't have to follow what comes up in your mind. You don't have to let it control you. And it's something that is hard to see at first. It's something that comes with the practice. I call it a depersonalization. Right? When you start to see that your thoughts are not you, it gets a little weird at first, but then it's really, really freeing. It's really freeing, because you don't have to follow those thoughts. They come up, but you can just let them go. And you have the power to do that. But you have to get to the point in the meditation where you actually see that for yourself to really believe it. Until that time, you won't believe it. So really, it's the depersonalization, the seeing the how the practice allows me to live the way I live. You know, of course, I mean, every once in a while there's like an amazing insight, wow, and you know, and then the insight stays or it goes, and then, okay, now continue walking back and forth, or continue sitting on the cushion, continue following your breath. You know, those are good experiences as well, but they pale in comparison to the freedom. I mean, it really, when you start to be able to depersonalize your thoughts, it really is like putting down a burden. It really is. Actually, the Buddha actually calls, calls I. The Buddha calls identity, this self-view. He calls that a burden. And letting go of that self-view is dropping that burden. It's the most bliss. It's the most freedom. So when you start to see that, so for me, that's really kind of the most rewarding part of my meditation every day. Yeah.
So being a monk and going through all of the mindfulness and the meditation, is there anything that you would go back and tell your young 20-year-old self, besides all of the things we already know about mindfulness? Is there anything that can help us become productive adult human beings?
The practice itself, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think about the first part. If there was anything I'd tell my younger self regarding this. I guess, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's almost kind of like almost like a regret kind of thing. Like, is there anything that I should tell my younger self so that, you know, he doesn't go through the stupid stuff that he did? I don't know. I mean, I guess for me to tell myself, the overall message would be is don't quit. You know, just keep going, no matter what you know, there's benefit to the practice, just to keep going, just to keep practicing. Don't let it fall by the wayside. And it will. I mean, it definitely will. You know, before I had a consistent daily practice where I literally practiced every day, I went through probably about 3 years of meditation. It's not an easy thing to develop that. And really what kind of has to happen is you have to make it a priority. You have to really see that it has benefits. You have to really experience those benefits, and it starts to become a priority over other things. You know, going back to a little bit about the video games, actually, how it became a priority for me was, you know, I wanted to meditate. And I knew I wanted to meditate, but, you know, I was meditating at night, after work, after running around in emergencies and working late and all this stuff, and it just didn't work. So it became enough a priority where instead of going to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning and playing video games until then, I went to bed at 11 and played video games till then. And I woke up earlier, and I made it a practice. I went to work earlier. I went from being the person who came in 15 minutes late with everybody else to the person who got there not at 9:15, but at 8:15. And I practiced. I did my walking meditation and my sitting meditation because I saw the benefit, and that turned into my consistent practice that I did for years. You know, and people saw that over the years. They saw that, and they knew who I was, and they knew what I did. And sometimes they'd ask me questions. But really I did quit in the beginning. And I think I told you guys this, because I developed such a negativity to the practice, because I didn't really have the right information. I didn't really have the right, you know, until I moved here, I was the only Buddhist I knew in my daily life. I didn't have a Sangha. I didn't have groups of people, you know, that I could be with, or a monk that I could learn from. So I learned a lot from online and stuff like that. And in the beginning, when I first practiced, this was even before I became a Buddhist, you know, the basic meditation is sit straight, close your eyes, follow your breath. And I'm like, okay, I can't sit straight. I can't follow my breath. suck. I can't believe this. And that just built and built and built. And I noticed I quit meditation because it was harming me more than it was helping me. Literally, it was literally making things worse. Yes, meditation can make things worse if that's how you do it, if that's the mindset, because you don't know. But when I came back a year and a half later, I said, you know what? I know meditation has benefits. I just know it. The article says so. So I'm going to come back. And it just clicked where I found the right teachings online. A monk talking about being kind to your mind and body. There's all this stuff that I told you guys. There's a reason I told you guys this, because this is what brought me back to my meditation. This is what made my meditation. The being light. It's the first time or Dalai Lama makes some jokes too, but I just listened to this one monk, Ajahn Brahm is his name, and he's just talking and he's just joking in the middle of the talk, and he's just happy and laughing. And like the old image of the happy laughing monk just clicked again, and it followed. It worked for me, and it totally changed my practice, and it led day by day of my practice to me being here in robes, And I started out, one thing I didn't tell you guys that I really wanted to tell you was that doing meditation 5 minutes a day is more important than doing meditation an hour once a week. If you consistently do that, even if it's 5 minutes, trust me, when I came back to meditation, I was kind to myself. I was very easy on myself. And I said to myself when I sat down, I'm going to sit. And for however long my mind and body are okay with sitting, that's how long I'm going to sit. And in the beginning, that was like 3 minutes. But that grew over the years to maybe 20 minutes. No, actually, since coming to the monastery, I can sit a little bit longer because I don't sit on chairs and lots of stuff, comfortable stuff anymore. So if you're having a lot of issues and you really want to do meditation, when you're in the car, don't have the car seat back. When you're sitting at a desk, don't lean back. Practice like this so you develop the strength in your abs to keep yourself up. It makes a big difference. I did that as a layperson years ago. So I think I kind of went off track a little bit. Let's see. How long did it take you to feel the effects of the meditation? After I came back, after I quit, when I came back the second time, I would say probably in the first couple months is when I really started to at least start to see the peace of it. The sitting down and not having the negativity in it. And also, because I had such issues following my breath, and I still do to this day. The breath and I, due to childhood asthma and allergies and all kinds of stuff, lots of fears and stuff, we don't get along that well. But we're getting along a lot better than we used to. But in the beginning, when I came back, I just did straight Vipassana. For the first 7 years of my practice, this is what I did. I just watched my body. I just sat there. Whatever came up, I observed it. And that brought me a long way. And in the stories, in the suttas, there are people who reach enlightenment just by doing that. Although it's a lot harder, and it's not something the Buddha necessarily recommends. And also in my own practice, there came a time where I had the intuition that I really need to start working with my breath. And that's really what I've been doing since then. So I would say, as long as you're not harping on yourself, as long as you're not making the meditation negative, I would say in the first couple of months you'll start to see some benefit at least to it. At the very least, it'll become a time where, if you've properly set yourself aside, if you've properly found a quiet space for you. At the very least, it'll be a time that you can get away from the hustle and bustle of your normal life. That can be one of the first benefits that you see. How old were you when you learned about meditation? I guess it was something that was kind of in my mind since, from teenage years. I mean, like I knew like there are these monks that meditated, but I didn't really know what it was or what it was for. I'd say probably, I guess, my early 20s, like the first couple years out of college is when I started to learn about meditation and want to try it, stuff like that. What was the biggest sacrifice you had to make when becoming a monk? Without a doubt, it's family. Especially, I have a very close Italian family. So it was tough. It was tough on them and tough on me when I left. I also had the extra added thing of I basically helped. My sister and I lived together, and I helped raise my nephew from the time he was 1 to the time he was 10, and then I left. And it's still hard on him a year and a half later. It's a lot better, but it's still hard. And that was something that definitely weighed on me during my practice here. Definitely weighed on me. I'm a lot better with it. It doesn't bother me as much. And, he's starting to move forward with it. But it's definitely, family was definitely the hardest thing. And indeed, it's really basically, unless you totally hate your family or you don't have any, for most monks, that is one of the hardest things, for sure, is to leave your family. Because these are your closest, your closest kin. And I guess if not the irony or the coincidence of the fact that I am so close to my family and that I always know that they have my back is one of the things actually that kind of support me being here. Like, I know that even though it hurts them, they still have my back about me being here, right? And so, leaving family is definitely the toughest. At least it was for me. So, but Bhante Ji confirms that this is a very common thing. He's ordained many, many monks over a lot of years. So he confirms that this is also one of the toughest things for most monks. Any other questions?
If you could do it over again, what would you change?
Life or this?
Like, this process, like what would you do differently?
Nothing. I liked that it's not something I rushed into. It was something that when I had the decision that I wanted to do it, anytime I had contact with a monk, I asked them for their advice. What's your advice to somebody who wants to become a monk? And so I would, keep that in my mind. I would go about my daily life. I would progress. I actually set a date about 2.5 years before. Like I said, I'm going to come to Bhavana March of 2014. I ended up coming September 2014, so it wasn't that bad of a projection. But, I don't think I would change anything. I think it was a good thing. Even though in my mind and in my heart I knew I wanted to be a monk, I didn't stop living life. It's not like I said before, it's not like I just laid back and just counted the days until I became a monk. I stopped, I still, dated, and I left myself open to dating. I still, I still did my career. I started my photography business after I knew I wanted to become a monk. So I still lived my life. Because really, what the practice has shown me is that all is uncertain. You don't know. Like, every time I thought, growing up, I was so much like this, because I knew, but by the time I was 11, I had the top 3 jobs I wanted to be. All through college, I knew exactly what I was going to be. I knew. And every time I know, life says, you don't know crap. And life does, throws you a curveball or totally changes things. And so I left myself open, and I'm happy that I went through that period. So there's really not much I would change. And, I still leave myself open. I don't know, do I feel like this is something I want to do for life? Yeah. Will I feel that way 10 years from now? I don't know. My mind, everything changes, especially the mind changes so quick. Like there's a sutta where people are talking with the Buddha about what to take as self. And the Buddha says, if you think you take your mind as self, it's better to take your body as self, because the body doesn't change that quick. The mind is always changing. And I mean, you hear, like I've even heard scientists talk about this now. It's a very common thing in Buddhists, but like you'll hear that the you that's here right now is not the same you that walked through that door, because of cells changing and the mind changing and all of these neurons changing, all of this stuff. So yeah, no, I've been pretty good. Even before I was a Buddhist, I don't really have any regrets in life. And I don't think I'd change anything. I think, I did it a good way. So, and it helped prepare me for the changes and the hardships of the life. Yeah.
So if you don't have parents, or if you hate your parents, how do you become a monk if you need your parents' permission?
I think that can be, if you don't have parents, well, it doesn't matter. If you hate your parents, I don't know. I guess it really kind of depends. I don't think in every tradition, in every situation, that's such a really hard and fast rule. I think it depends. So I guess if you hate your parents, try to find a teacher that'll ordain you otherwise. I mean, I don't know. Or do your best to try to at least get them to, give you permission. I think one of the, to kind of go a little bit off a tangent, but the same thing, when people ask like, how do I help people, or how do I change people, or how do I talk to people about Buddhism? Especially when you're a new Buddhist, also you just want to, it's like the greatest thing you've ever found, and you just want to tell everybody about Buddhism, and they'll say, everybody will be happy and everything like this. And really the best way that you advertise for your practice is to live the practice. And so if somebody, I feel like if you really live the practice, if you really show that you're serious, that it would take a really tough parent to not agree in the end. So, anything else? Yeah.
Do you still, do you still do photography?
See, I'm like the default camera photography guy here so I'm using my skills for a good purpose. For every time Bhante G does a talk, I got a camera. I got the camera there so that I can watch myself and see how horrible I did, and I can learn from that. So that's a good reason for that. Yeah, I have my camera. We take pictures of various things. We have a Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus. I mean, we're totally in all the social media, and so a lot of the pictures we take also go on that. When people, we have volunteers who put stuff on this social media, and they take pictures from Bhavana and they put the pictures up and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I get to use my photography skills, and it's been an interesting experience also to kind of see that even though I still have my camera and my equipment, and even though I'm still doing the skills, I've actually can see in my mind that I'm kind of letting go of that too. I don't feel as attached to my camera as I used to, or attached to taking pictures and being a photographer. If we have the camera, we can use it for a skillful purpose to help out bhavana. But yeah, so yes, I take pictures still, take video. I can't upload it because our internet is really bad. So we have to have somebody outside upload any videos of Bhattaji and the retreats here and stuff like that. Anything else? All right, you guys have 10 minutes less of meditation than you have to do. We can make it easy on ourselves. Okay, so we can take a break and come back for meditation until 9.